Beautiful Anonymous changes each week. It defies genres and expectations. For example, our most recent episode, I talked to a woman who survived a murder attempt by her own son. But just the week before that, we just talked the whole time about Star Trek. We've had other recent episodes about sexting in languages that are not your first language, or what it's like to get weight loss surgery. It's unpredictable, it's real, it's honest, it's raw. Get Beautiful Anonymous wherever you listen to podcasts.
Dude, for the last time, just tell us where you're taking us.
Seriously, yes. Look, either I lead you guys to my opening of show ideas, or we all wake up on it. What do you guys want?
Okay,
Which one do you want?
No, this is fine.
Okay, good. We're here anyways. Ta-da!
It's a box? It's a box.
A raft, Tom. A raft. It's for this week's episode about the Acali Experiment or whatever it's called. I figure, what better way for us to get into the mindset of what happened than doing it ourselves? Think about it. 101 days at sea, fighting storms and sail. Will we be brought closer together by the experience, or will we be driven apart? Only one way to find out, right?
Eli, we've been on a podcast together for almost exactly 6 years now. We've done live shows, events, conventions, and shit together. Like, what makes you think being on a raft would change that?
Yeah. Oh, you didn't let me finish. There's only one sex robot, and it looks like Heath's mom.
Okay. Yeah, well, that'll do it.
Oh,
yeah.
You have a point.
Hate you guys.
See, it started already.
I'm shitting.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, a podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts. Because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm Heath, and I'll be the captain of this just horribly tragic boat thing that I guess we're doing. And I'm joined by the crew. First up, we have Castaway Popeye and Castaway Bluto, Tom and Cecil.
I am what I am. And that should worry all of you, actually.
It's just a can of spinach with a bloody smiley handprint on it floating off to sea.
Exactly, yeah. And rounding out the crew, we also have Noah the Powder Monkey and Eli the Cabin Boy with arm swimmies.
I got way too excited, and then I Googled it, and I found out Powder Monkey is not the upcoming sequel to Cocaine Bear, but it was kind of cool. I get gunpowder.
Yeah. Also, my mom said I should take them off when I'm a confident swimmer, and I'm still not, so they're staying on.
Fantastic.
All right, let's get right into it. Tom, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event are we going to be talking about today?
Today we will be talking about the Acali Experiment.
Okay, and what is your preamble before we talk about that?
Fair, very fair. All right, look, I've done a lot of writing about failed expeditions and voyages, partly because this is citation needed, and failure is invariably funny, but mostly because I'm fascinated by the idea of the journey. The Conrad-esque odyssey into the unknown as metaphor for our need to understand something about ourselves, about the peculiar condition that is our own humanity. I'm leaning in.
Love it.
So when a listener
context.
suggested the Acali Experiment, I was only too happy to begin reading about it, and I quickly became fascinated. Here is an experiment, a trek made purposefully for exactly this purpose, not to discover a new land, but to use the very idea of the journey as a method of learning more about who we are as people. And of course, the whole thing was a goddamn clusterfuck and a failure, so it just fits right here in the show.
Yeah. So someone was walking by as you were monologuing on your perpetual dock, and they were like, that sounds like fucking science to me. Let's do that. Okay. So what is the topic within the metaphor about humanity?
The Acali Experiment was the brainchild of Santiago Genovese, a Mexican anthropologist who dedicated his life to studying the phenomenon of human violence, a topic his life's experiences naturally led him to pursue. Prior to ending up in Mexico, Santiago endured the horrors of the Spanish Civil War, fleeing Spain at the age of 15, only to be arrested in France and thrown into a concentration camp. And having borne witness to intense violence and growing up in a world only beginning to recover from the horrors of World War II, Genovese eventually made his way to Mexico. And there he became one of the first of the nation's physical anthropologists. Santiago became determined to understand what caused violence, to find out if the roots of human violence were inborn features of our nature or the result of the soup we're swimming in.
Well, people are violent in literally any place they are under any conditions, so solved it for you. Don't do a weird boat thing.
Yeah,
There you go. I did it.
no need. No need. Like the fact we had a sequel to World War I, dude. Give me a fucking break.
Now, so engrossed, I love this part of the story, so engrossed and enamored of his study of violence was Genovese that when he found himself aboard an airplane that was hijacked by terrorists, he recalls thinking that the situation was, quote, too good to be true. Yeah,
What?
that was a quote from him. He loved it. Rather than being terrified by the experience, Santiago busied himself taking notes on the behavior of the hijackers and the hostages, treating the experience as a rather sudden and unexpected experiment rather than an actual threat to his life, which, by the way, it absolutely was.
It sounds like every scientist in every horror movie. Great start so far, man.
Sorry, hostage guy, quick thing. When you hit that child with the butt of your gun just then, did you yell die now or buy now? Because I'm just taking notes. It's for a science thing.
Now, that hijacking and what he learned from it sparked a thought for Genovese. See, there, trapped in the confines of that airplane was a nearly perfect experimental model.
Nope.
Yeah, no, see, high above the ground, the situation was perfect isolation. The plane provided a way to eliminate outside variables. Once safely back on terra firma, Santiago began to muse about how to recreate the situation that he had experienced in a way that would give him more time to carefully study violence and its causes without possibly exploding.
What does he think an experiment is? Did he hear the phrase in a vacuum and thought to himself, got it, so the only true boxing match is in space?
So this story ends up with this guy fighting Batman, though, right?
The problem with this airplane hijacking, it's the exogenous variable.
Now, as luck would have it, Genovese was also somewhat obsessed with the sea. See, just 3 years prior to having been hijacked, he had participated in an anthropological study that sought to prove that the papyrus ships available to ancient Egyptians were capable of traveling across the oceans. And in 1969, he set sail with Norwegian anthropologist Thor Unpronounceable as part of the crew of a papyrus ship that departed from Morocco on its way to America.
Oh, it's the Kon-Tiki guy.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
And
He'll get himself an episode one of these days.
there were actually two ships that set sail. There was the Ra 1 and the Ra 2, but one of them was shipwrecked in a storm. The other, however, actually made it all the way across the goddamn ocean, traveling 3,000 miles and eventually landing in Barbados.
Yeah, they were super pissed that the paper airplane beat him by 6 days. They were so mad.
Guys, the letter in the bottle passed us again. Let's just pick it up. It's ridiculous. We sent that.
But is that a one-armed guy on a bicycle? How did you even get out here?
Fuck you.
Santiago knew that the isolation of a sea voyage would allow him the perfect laboratory for his study of human violence.
Can you hear the words you're saying, Santiago? Can you hear them out loud? The things you're saying?
Adrift on the open ocean, cut off from outside influences, he would be able to observe and track human behavior in a way that he hoped would give him unique and unadulterated insights into the causes of that violence, provided, of course, that he provoked just the ever-loving shit out of people. And this set the stage for the Acali Experiment. His studies of violence in monkeys led him to conclude that much violence was the result of sexual tensions. Quote, most conflicts are about sexual access to ovulating females, he noted. And would the same be true for violence among people?
That it would be about ovulating monkey ladies? I feel like no.
No.
Probably not. No.
Speak for
You
yourself.
didn't test it, though.
Yeah, you can put him on a boat. And to find out, he commissioned the construction of a raft for his grand experiment. Note that I did not say boat there. This was a raft, and not by seafaring standards, a particularly large one. The Acali was basically just a big floaty rectangle, measured 12 meters by 7 meters, and it had a single sail. It had no engine to keep it moving at all. And the idea was just to stick this goofy, barely seaworthy lump into the water and then float across the entire damn ocean from the Canary Islands to Mexico with just a bunch of people aboard in stressful conditions, and then, see if Piggy's head ended up on a pike at the end of the trip.
Sorry, he didn't feel like he had enough case studies of human beings turning violent under stressful conditions? He needed a buoyant one to really lock in that hypothesis.
Yeah, this doesn't sound like a scientist. This is a sociopath who knows how to write a goddamn grant proposal, right?
Now, since he was looking to create tension, he needed people who weren't experienced mariners and who, he thought, would be under ever-increasing stress on the trip. So the crew he assembled were selected specifically because they were all sexually attractive.
Okay. You ever get forced to watch reality TV with somebody? This is what I'm fantasizing about for the cast every time I'm forced to watch reality TV.
Now, beyond just being sexually attractive, he sought to enhance the tension by selecting mostly married people. Many of them had children as well, who would miss their loved ones and also feel conflicted and guilty about wanting to get it on with the sexy randos he chose to surround them with.
Hey, Captain, I think I understand most of the sailing equipment here, but why are all these pizza boxes with holes cut in the bottom under here? Why do we have those?
I'm just saying, look who's safe from the angry fuckboat. It turns out the ranking of our cast's attractiveness wasn't so bad for me after all.
But this means that the grant proposal had to say, I want to watch sexy wet people punch each other at some point. Like, how did nobody stop this? Does that sound more convincing in
Why
Spanish?
would anyone stop this? Is
Why
another
would
way
you
to phrase
Thank you.
that.
That's I would love that TV show.
That should just be what it's called. Sexy wet people punch each other. I would never turn it off.
No, that's true. Yeah, that's fair.
That's called The Bachelorette, man. Pay attention.
He also chose the widest cross-section of people you could imagine, many of whom did not share a common language. With the hope that difficulty communicating would just make all things more difficult. And he wanted a microcosm of the world aboard his raft, isolated from everyone and unable to just tap out of the experiment. He chose a Japanese photographer, an Angolan priest, a French scuba diver, a Swedish woman as the boat captain, an Israeli doctor, a waitress from Alaska, among others. And of course, Santiago was also part of the experiment himself, acting both as observer and participant.
He's going to get in a teleporter with a fly eventually, isn't he?
I want to see the look on his face when the 15th person asks, hey, why is everybody so much better looking than you? It's on the boat. It's so weird. I was just ranking them, and
I can tell you how he feels.
The raft's design was also made to foster tension by essentially eliminating anything remotely approaching privacy. Santiago figured that if he could create sexual tensions but eliminate privacy and opportunity among the young hot people, he could heighten the sexual tension without allowing easy chances for release or pair bonding. The sleeping quarters were communal, basically just a big open space in the interior of the raft without partitions for privacy.
The interior of that tiny little thing you were talking about? I don't understand. Yeah, the test run in the 12-person canoe with fuck drawers, that was super peaceful. No good data there. I better change it up for the real one.
Now, and then there were the facilities, or rather the lack thereof. And keeping with the designed lack of privacy, there was no bathroom on the raft.
wait, what?
Yeah, there's not. Instead, they just had kind of a plank that stuck out over the side with a hole cut in it that the participants had to climb out onto and then just shit into the ocean in full view of everyone.
Okay, I feel like this is going to backfire. That's bonding right there, right? Yeah, right. Not a good eye contact.
In the documentary I watched titled The Raft about the experiment, a couple of the participants reminisced about having to shit in the ocean with the waves sometimes being large enough to splash up and just bidet clean them as they did their sit and shit. Sharks followed the boat, and female participants worried about menstruating, attracting, and exciting those sharks.
If Eli was on the boat, the sharks wouldn't have to choose between shit and blood. So you got that going for us.
And I'm told I'm never more cherubic than when I'm sleep farting. So missed opportunity, Santiago.
I bet Eli could have inspired some violence on the boat. Sorry, I'm getting it.
I absolutely would have
They wouldn't have
inspired
gotten
that.
off the dock. They wouldn't have untied the raft. Now, the women on the raft were given the most important jobs, a subversion of the more patriarchally typical power structure you would expect in the early 1970s. Again, to see if you could just stir up some fragile male ego violence. Musing, quote,
This will not backfire, is my guess.
No, probably fine. Quote, I wonder if having women in power will lead to less violence or more. Maybe men will become more frustrated when women are in charge and try to take over power. This is probably my favorite part of the experiment because, spoiler, it absolutely did, but not at all how he anticipated. Pinning that for later. Now, if at this point you may be wondering, like I was, what exactly the plan would be for Santiago on how to actually handle violence if it broke out aboard the ship, here I have to tell you that there appears to be no plan for that. Like he wanted it to happen, no plan. I'm not kidding at all. I watched a documentary. I read at least 5 good-sized articles on this experiment. And while there's much to be made of all the efforts of Genovese to create the conditions for violence, I literally can't find anything at all that might address what exactly his plan would be to not all end up dead if any of his plans had actually worked.
Okay. So basically, he set up L. Ron Hubbard's Sea Org, but like without all the safety features and responsible management of Scientology. Cool. So we'll see how that goes after a quick break for some apropos of nothing.
Mr. Genovese,
Yes, Frampton.
I have some questions about your proposed experiment.
Yes, Frampton. What are they?
Right, so I'm reading your abstract, and it appears to be, quote, I'm going to trap a bunch of sexy ladies with me on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and they're in charge, but they're also scared, and they have to let me watch them poop and sleep next to me. It's the rules.
Yes, Frampton.
So are you sure I can't convince you to just hire a prostitute or two instead?
I don't know, Frampton. Will they let me watch them poop off a side of a boat?
I don't know. Probably not, actually.
Then no deal. For science.
No, not science.
And we're back. When we left off, a motley crew of supermodels was making very hard eye contact and shitting and fucking each other on a badminton court in the middle of the ocean, while a nerd rode along next to them taking notes and, I'm assuming, masturbating. What's next in the science, Tom?
All right, so I think I know I've set the scene well enough for you. Santiago Genovese created what he thought would be the perfect laboratory for a violent, sexually charged murder boat with no plans to do anything but just take notes if shit went full Lord of the Flies thousands of miles into international waters. But, and here is my favorite thing ever, none of it worked at all. Not really. The participants in the study did find one another attractive, and there was at least a little bit of sex on board, but because he'd made it so difficult and annoying, there wasn't really a lot of action. If two people happened to be on watch together at night while everyone was asleep, they could get some business done, but someone always still had to keep at least one hand on the tiller, so it's just sort of awkward and not really worth the effort.
Strong disagreement.
Yeah. Gives a whole new meaning to Dutch rudder.
And since people weren't really fucking that much, they also weren't pairing off, and they weren't really getting jealous. Nobody was getting laid over much, and nobody was really that sexually frustrated. It wasn't a thing. In fact, pretty quickly, everybody just started getting along. Like really, really well. The participants, stripped of opportunities for other diversions, they weren't even allowed books to read while on board, they fairly quickly found ways to bond. The lack of privacy, rather than making people ornery, seemed only to help participants shed their natural inhibitions and shyness, and seemed instead to make them more open and helpful to one another.
And Santiago was so mad.
He is so mad. He is so mad about this, guys, for real. And rather than violence, participants began to teach each other songs from their culture and build deep bonds of friendship.
I fucking love this. This sociopathic nerd's just riding along next to him. He's furious. He's trying to do like ventriloquism slur words in languages he doesn't even know, trying to start fights. But they're all just like, let's work on our acapella group. We're going to harmonize it.
But this wasn't a study of friendship and fellowship. This was supposed to be a study of violence. So Santiago began to provoke the participants, revealing the answers to very personal surveys and questionnaires that he had routinely solicited from the human guinea pigs. He forced everyone to sit together in the communal area of the raft while he read aloud answers to questions like, who do you find the most annoying on this raft, and who would you most like to have sex with? And basically, he made them rate the attractiveness of the cast of the raft and then looked around expectantly for someone to please bludgeon someone else at least a little bit.
Who would you like to most have sex with? Who wrote your mom on all these surveys? Come on. That's childish.
He grabs one dude's wrist, starts punching another guy with his hands or something.
Rather than cause division among the participants, however, everyone just started to really dislike Santiago, who it turns out had the most fragile ego on the raft. And fairly readily, Santiago had become socially isolated from the group, with the participants beginning to resent being provoked while they were just trying to hang out and shit on the heads of sharks.
Okay, you guys are nothing like every stripper I've ever met who was actually super attracted to me, okay? Can I just say this?
A couple of months into the float, the raft entered the Caribbean Sea, but the timing was not ideal. It was now hurricane season, and a tropical storm was brewing around them. The captain, a Swedish woman, if you'll recall, insisted that the raft make for the nearest available land, but nobody had gotten beat up even a little bit yet, and Genovese didn't want the experiment to end before someone got slightly killed. In the only display of actual male ego fragility, Genovese then mutinied against the captain, seized control of the raft, and forced the crew to tie shit down and ride out a tropical storm on a big, dumb floating rectangle. Now, miraculously, they survived the storm, but now everyone was just super pissed. But only at Genovese, who they rightly felt had nearly killed them all so he could take notes on violence. The captain was especially furious, having been summarily deposed of her authority and her expertise disregarded to assuage the ego of Santiago. It was at this point that the only contemplations of violence aboard the Acali were noted. In the documentary The Raft, two participants discussed the secret conversations they had contemplating murdering Genovese, one noting that they should all put their hands on the same knife and, quote, plunge it into him so everybody was guilty.
Christ.
We would wrap him in a sheet, carry him over the railing, and drop him in, end quote.
Okay, I like the all stab thing, but what if we strap a knife to the planchette of a Ouija board? Then nobody did it.
They were going to get away with murder using this one simple trick. I fucking love it.
Vectors.
But they didn't kill Santiago. Instead, he was likely saved by his own incompetence. See, a few days later, after riding out the storm, another existential threat loomed in the distance, this time in the form of a massive commercial ship that was bearing down on them. Remember that their dumb raft had really no significant ability to maneuver over much, so they weren't able to get out of the way. A strike by the massive ocean liner would have crushed the raft into flotsam and killed everyone on board. Genovese, the recently self-appointed captain, just completely panicked. Luckily, the actual captain did not, and she quickly seized control of the raft from Santiago and, using flares, alerted the larger ship to their presence and avoided catastrophe.
Just one guy furiously shitting over the side to maneuver the raft out of the way. Just like,
The Eli of the crew steps forward with his fists on his hip. step aside, friend. My time to shine is upon us.
Get me dairy.
A Santiago Genovese, who had created the perfect conditions for fragile male egos to get all but hurt when women were in control, sank into a deep depression when his fragile male ego became butthurt. And he retreated to the interior of the ship, and he just lay despondent in bed, unable and unwilling to recover his interest in his own experiment after being humiliated from his double reverse mutiny.
Santiago, buddy, you pouting because your attempt to study the most common and boring of human phenomena failed? You're pouting because your attempt to study the most common and boring of human phenomena failed. Okay.
After 101 days at sea, the Acali successfully made its way to Mexico. But the experiment was a bust. Reporters had found out about the experiment and seized on the salaciousness of good-looking young people boning out at sea for science, and they popularly rechristened the Acali the sex raft in all of the papers. Santiago's university colleagues disavowed Genovese after all the press to create distance from the unpopular experiment. And despite an unbelievable amount of data and record keeping, tracking everything from lunar cycles and wave heights and menstrual cycles, there's just no real usable data about violence and human nature. And despite all of his attempts to recreate the awesomeness of being hijacked by terrorists, Santiago only proved that people don't kill each other just because he made fucking annoying and inconvenient.
I bet there was shitting data. I bet there was some useful shitting data. I'm just saying. All right, if you had to summarize what you've learned in one sentence, what would it be?
That people don't kill each other just because he made fucking annoying and inconvenient.
It's good to know, at this point, it's good to know one condition in which humans don't kill each other at the very least, right?
Yeah. We got to make fucking annoying and inconvenient.
And are you ready for the quiz?
I am ready for the quiz.
All right, Tom. The Raft, you've got to admit, is a pretty lame name for the documentary on this experiment. What should it have been called?
Oh boy.
A. Genovese anything.
So
B.
bad.
Santiago fuck yourself.
Not good.
C. The not that much love boat.
Just D. None of those. None of those
Thank
above.
you.
None of those
Go
above.
The raft is certainly better than all of those. You got that one right.
Correct, yeah.
All right. So if the university hadn't disavowed Genovese, what was his next planned experiment? A.
All right.
Seeing who could set off the loudest firecracker outside of Eli's kid's bedroom. B. Seeing what happens when you make a bunch of jet-lagged, already anxious air travelers walk through a slow cattle line for 45 minutes, then follow a bunch of inconsistent demands barked at by impatient, cavalier, underpaid fucking security guards that are about to x-ray their junk. C. Seeing if he could transmogrify himself into a literal asshole. Or D. The Stanford prison experiment.
Oh, it's close. It's not Stanford. You're trying to trick me with that one. I think it's B. I think it's the year at the airport.
It is B.
Yeah.
This is the guy that came up with airport security. Yes.
All right, Tom. To pass the time, the people on the boat would play board games while they were on the open air toilet. What was the most popular game? A. Toots and Ladders. B. Chode names. C. Game of Thrones. Or D. D.
Nice.
Categories.
Man.
Categories.
I feel like this is a toss-up between Game of Thrones, which is just beautiful, and Toots and Ladders. I gotta go with Toots and Ladders.
Oh, I think you're
Toots and
right.
Ladders,
Yeah,
okay.
because Eli wins somehow. So yes, you are correct.
Yes, we're not.
No,
never figured out.
Cecil, you
win.
win. Cecil, you win. You announced.
No,
nope.
I win.
Cecil
I win.
definitely won.
I win.
I won. No. I write next week. Eli picks me.
You can pick yourself.
I win. I win.
He won't let it go.
Like
It's like,
it says in the
no.
fucking script.
Here's what I'll do. I'll win, and magnanimously allow Eli to pick someone. Go ahead, Eli.
Thank you, Cecil. I pick you for
Okay.
next week.
Excellent. Well, for Tom, Noah, Cecil, and Eli, I'm Heath. Thank you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and Cecil will be an expert on something else by his own choosing, but Eli announced it. Between now and then, you can hear Tom and Cecil on Cognitive Dissonance, and you can hear Eli, Noah, and myself on God Awful Movies, Scathing Atheist, Skeptocrat, and D&D Minus. And if you'd like to join the ranks of our extremely generous patrons, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod. We love those people, and you too can buy our love with money. That is exactly how it works, 100%. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, listen to past episodes, connect with us on social media, or take a look at the show notes, check out citationpod.com.
And if you're a high enough patron, we'll let you watch while we shit on off the side of a boat.
You don't need to be a patron for that. You just need to ask. Just ask nicely.
Some of us will
The number's
pay you.
medium for me.
Sir,
Yes, Frampton.
just looking over your next experiment, it says I'm going to need like hundreds of pictures of women's feet. Don't worry, it's for science.
Yes, Frampton. Questions?
Nope, I just wanted to hear myself say it out loud, I guess.
Well, then go.
Yeah, no, I'm on it.